Me, 27-year-old male, and my girlfriend, 27-year-old female, let's call her Beth, have been together for a year now. When we met, she was very much her own woman, with a bartending job, her own group of friends, and her own hobbies. Now granted, this wasn't the best thing because she was in a bit of a toxic era and she hated her job. But in time, she got rid of all that toxicity and got a better job. From the start of our relationship, clinginess has been an issue. She only worked weekends, and I had a 9-to-5 work-from-home schedule. So basically, that meant that she was around me every hour of every day, except for the 12 to 18 combined hours she worked on the weekends. To make it worse, she was not a good presence at home. If she even bothered to leave my room, because there were several days where she would literally not move unless it was to use the bathroom, she would badger me while I'm working, trying to show me memes or have conversations. I had to tell her multiple times that just because I work from home doesn't mean that my work requires any less focus, and that this isn't quality time while I play on my computer. The thing is, I wasn't even angry because I knew there were some bad elements in her life, and maybe this was her escape. So over time, we had some great conversations, she made better friends, and she left her old job for a day job that she loved. So we got our space. Things regressed after the Christmas break. Basically, she decided to take an indefinite sabbatical, so now she's here 24/7. She almost never goes to her own apartment, never hangs out with her friends, and never does her hobbies. I asked about her mental health and even offered to put her in touch with my old therapist, but she insists she's fine. She just likes not having to do anything. I've brought up that she should be spending time with her friends, or at the very least, enjoying her hobbies, but she insists she's not interested. Once again, I brought up the conversation about us having our own lives, even though our relationship is the priority. She basically was like, yeah, of course, but no attempts at changing. Things came to a boiling point yesterday when she kept trying to show me memes while I was working, and I snapped and told her to get that shoot out of my face. She got really angry and said it was ridiculous to get that mad over your girlfriend trying to spend time with you. I told her it's ridiculous for a grown woman to be shoving memes into her boyfriend's face all day. I said she needs to get a life and stop being so codependent. It very much hurt her. I could tell that right away. I apologized, but couldn't really console her because I was literally about to be in a meeting. She ended up going to her apartment while I was on Zoom, and she hasn't returned my calls or texts. I genuinely think my anger came from a valid place, but I felt like I shouldn't have snapped like that, especially when memes are part of our love language, and everything seems to have just escalated so quickly. I don't know. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You went a bit far with the snapping, getting a life. But I would be incredibly annoyed if a partner did that. Then again, unlike you, I wouldn't let my partner just chill in my room while I work, especially if she was constantly showing me memes. It sounds like you never actually had a formal sit-down conversation about. You kept having her over, letting her stay in your room, getting yourself more and more annoyed. And now that you've snapped, she sees it as, he hates me, or the like. You need to explain what the issue is, and lay out some changes, which will include her not trying to hang out with you during your workday. Everyone sucks here. Comment 2. For context, before the "why didn't you kick her out" crowd takes over, I wanted her to get out of the apartment on her own accord without feeling forced out. That's where the conversations in the beginning of our relationship came in. For context, I helped her find her current job and convinced her to leave the one she hates. I got her a new paint kit so that she could enjoy her painting hobby more. Plus, overall, I had conversations where I straight up told her she needs to go out and do more. The thing is, it worked. It's just that in the past month, she regressed, and when I tried to do the same method, it didn't work this time. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a busy week, and I've got quite the update for you all. So after Beth stormed off to her apartment, I was left feeling like a jerk. I knew I had to make things right, but I also knew that we needed to address the underlying issues in our relationship. I decided to give her some space for a couple of days, hoping she'd cool off and we could talk things through. During those days, I couldn't help but think about how Beth had changed since we first met. She used to be so independent, always out with friends or diving into her hobbies. I missed that version of her, the one who had her own life outside of our relationship. It was one of the things that attracted me to her in the first place. After 2 days of radio silence, I went over to her apartment. I was nervous, but I needed to see her. When I got there, I found her door slightly ajar. I called out for her, but there was no response. Pushing the door open, I stepped inside and was hit by a wave of surprise. The place was transformed. There were new paintings on the walls, plants everywhere, and even a small home studio set up in the corner. It was like walking into a completely different world. Beth was there, headphones on, completely lost in painting something. She looked up, surprised to see me, but there was a spark in her eyes that I hadn't seen in months. We talked, and she explained that after our fight, she realized she needed to find herself again. She apologized for being so clingy and told me she started a project that she was passionate about. I apologized too, for snapping at her, and we agreed to set some boundaries to give each other the space we needed. Things were looking up, or so I thought. The next few days were great. Beth spent more time at her place, working on her art, and I was able to focus on my work. We planned dates and actually looked forward to seeing each other. It felt like we were getting back on track. But then, the unexpected happened. One evening, as I was finishing up work, there was a knock on my door. It was Beth's best friend, Jess, looking frantic. She blurted out that Beth had been seeing someone else. My heart dropped. Jess explained that she didn't want to be the one to tell me, but she thought I deserved to know the truth. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. Beth had been the one who was always around, who seemed to need my attention constantly. How could she have had the time to see someone else? I confronted Beth about it, and after a long, tense conversation, she admitted that she had started seeing someone during her sabbatical, but insisted it was over now. She said she was just feeling lost and made a mistake. I was hurt, angry, and confused. I didn't know what to believe. We decided to take a break from each other to figure things out. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, but I knew we couldn't just go back to how things were. Now here's where it gets even crazier. A few days into our break, I was at a local coffee shop trying to clear my head when I saw Beth's other guy. I recognized him from a photo Jess showed me. He was there with another woman, looking cozy. I couldn't help myself. I approached him and asked about Beth. He was taken aback, but admitted that he knew she was in a relationship and that it was just a casual thing for him. I left the coffee shop feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me was relieved to know that Beth might not have been as invested in this fling as I feared. But another part of me was furious that she could betray our relationship like that. Now I'm sitting here, trying to piece together my feelings. Beth has been trying to reach out, saying she wants to make things right. But I don't know if I can trust her again. And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I got a message from her. She's pregnant. Grandma forgives my car loan, but after she passes, Dad demands repayment, and his wife accuses me of owing more until truth comes out and we start fixing our broken bonds. I am a professional essay proofreader, specializing in preparing amateur essays for spoken competition. Here is the corrected text. I am a 44-year-old man who borrowed a decent amount of money from my grandmother about 15 years ago to purchase a newer car as mine was about to die. Initially, I had asked my grandmother to just sign for a loan as my credit was poor from a recent divorce and needing to file for bankruptcy after the divorce. She preferred to just pay for it as she was fairly well off. We did not draw up a contract for the car. I paid her back a significant amount towards the vehicle, and we were both satisfied with the deal. About a year into our agreement, I lost my job and my salary was cut in half. I kept paying back the loan as best I could with direct deposits from my paycheck, but the amount was much lower. When the bankruptcy was filed, my direct deposit stopped. I was unaware that this was even a possibility with the bankruptcy filing. My grandmother asked me to just pay what I could when I could. The payments to her became fewer and in smaller amounts as money was very tight at that time. Eventually, my grandmother decided to forgive the loan because of the strain on our relationship and family. Fast forward about 8 years, and my grandmother has passed away and left a significant amount of money and property to my dad and his other 3 siblings. I won't say the amount, but it was significant, although not seriously life-changing. My dad is retired with a very good pension, as well as his wife. I do not call her my stepmom, as she and I have never had a good relationship since she and my dad started their relationship less than 2 months after my mom passed away. Unbeknownst to me, my grandmother had it in her will that any money owed by grandkids to her at the time of her death was forfeit from inheritance to the parent of that grandkid. So, my dad and stepmom got less money than 2 of my dad's siblings. The 3rd sibling also got less because their son also owed money to my grandmother. my dad asked to meet after she passed. We were less than halfway through breakfast when he asked me when I will start paying him back his money. I hadn't borrowed money from him, so I was confused. He meant the money I had borrowed from my grandmother, as he felt I owed him the debt I had with her. I told him I wasn't aware my debt transferred to him with my grandmother's death, as it was never explained to me that way. My new wife and I were not in a good financial situation, as she had just lost her job due to an injury that was not her fault, and that reduced about half of our household income. He knew this was the case and still decided it was a good idea to ask for money. I told him I didn't owe him a debt, as I hadn't borrowed money from him, and I wasn't even in a good financial place, even if I felt I owed him. There have been no legal contracts involved with this money other than my grandmother's will. After that meeting, we have been completely no contact. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Everyone sucks here. You didn't pay grandma back. People like you are why I never lend money or co-sign for family. If you managed to find the cash to woo and marry during that time, you could have paid grandma back. Your dad doesn't get to reopen a debt that is 8 years old. Even a collections company would have written it off by now. I wouldn't expect to inherit anything from your dad. If you are cool with no contact being permanent, just ignore him and his demands. Comment 2. Not the idiot. If the loan was in fact forgiven by your grandmother, then you didn't owe her any money at the time of her death. Do you have anything in writing about the loan being forgiven? If it was officially forgiven, it shouldn't have been deducted from your dad's share of the inheritance. But either way, that's not your problem. Now, for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been a week since I last posted about the whole mess with my dad and the money I owed my late grandmother. You guys wanted an update, so here it is, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. So, after going no contact with my dad, I thought that would be the end of it, but boy, was I wrong. My dad's wife, who I refused to call my stepmom, decided to take matters into her own hands. She's always been the type to stir the pot, and this time was no different. She showed up at my house unannounced, which was a shocker because we've never been on drop-by terms. She started off by acting all sweet, saying she wanted to mend fences. But then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. She claimed that my grandmother had told her about another loan I supposedly took out, which I knew nothing about. I was floored. I mean, I had my issues in the past, like the bankruptcy after my divorce, but I've always been upfront about my debts. I tried to keep my cool and told her that there was no such loan. But she was insistent, saying that my dad was too embarrassed to confront me about it, and that's why she was there. It was a jaw-dropping moment, and I was starting to feel like I was in some soap opera. Now, let's rewind a bit. When I was younger, I had a bit of a rebellious streak. I wasn't the easiest kid to deal with, and my relationship with my dad was strained, to say the least. But I had turned my life around, especially after my first marriage fell apart. I worked hard to rebuild my credit and my life. So, this accusation from my dad's wife felt like a slap in the face, dredging up a past I had worked hard to leave behind. Back to the present, I told her that I needed proof of this mysterious loan. She said she'd get it and stormed out. I was left standing there, trying to piece together what just happened. A couple of days later, my dad calls me out of the blue. He's furious, saying that I embarrassed him in front of his wife by denying the loan. I tried to explain that I genuinely didn't know what she was talking about, but he wasn't having any of it. He said he'd talk to his lawyer and get back to me. I hung up, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. Now, here's where things get even more twisted. My wife, bless her heart, has been my rock through all of this. She's been recovering from her injury and dealing with the job loss, but she's been so supportive. She started digging through old boxes of paperwork, looking for anything that might help clear this up. And guess what? She found something. It was an old birthday card from my grandmother to me, with a check inside for a couple $100. The memo line? To help with the car. It was dated around the same time as the supposed second loan. I called my dad and told him about the card and the check. There was silence on the other end for what felt like an eternity. Then he started laughing. Turns out, it was all a huge misunderstanding. My dad's wife had overheard a conversation about the birthday money and thought it was another loan. My dad was embarrassed and apologized for jumping to conclusions. So it looks like things are somewhat back to normal, or as normal as they can be with my family. My dad and I are talking again, but it's going to take some time to fully mend fences. As for his wife, well, let's just say she's not my favorite person right now. My scholarship friends call my home trash, so I call them spoiled. But when one spreads lies about my family, she learns her own are tax evaders, and now she's the outcast. I, 15-year-old female, have a scholarship to a private school that would otherwise charge a total of £120,000. I have a group of 6 close friends, all 14, 15-year-old girls, who range from regular middle class to very wealthy. We occasionally have sleepovers at each other's houses, and I'm the only one who has yet to host one. Here's the thing. I live in a council house, basically a house we don't have to pay for, in a very lower class neighborhood full of crime, burglaries, robberies, fights, etc. My friends know that I'm poor, but they have never treated me differently for it until now. We planned to stay at my place for the weekend, and we went straight to my home after school. On the way, one of my friends kept making remarks about how intimidating the people were in my area, and the others just agreed, including calling this homeless man who came up to us asking for money creepy and perverted. This group of teenagers started randomly harassing and yelling stuff at us, trying to start an argument, and when they left, my friends called them trashy and chavs, a derogatory term for lower-class people. Previously, I'd opened up to them about how hard it was to live here, and how our house had been vandalized before, and how we had to hide valuables in case of a break-in. I live in a small 2-bedroom flat on the first floor. My bedroom is only a box room that's small enough for my bed to fit exactly at one end. I sleep on a mattress on the floor, and the only other furniture I had was a box for storage. When my friends saw this, they kept giving fake, sarcastic compliments about how cozy and tiny it was. After about an hour, one of my friends called her parents to pick her up and made some excuse about how she suddenly remembered that she had a family thing planned, which I initially believed. Then, soon after, another friend also said she had to leave as she was feeling sick. At this point, I got suspicious, and they eventually revealed that they felt unsafe staying over in my neighborhood and wanted to leave. One friend said my house felt dangerous since my mom was working a shift that afternoon and wouldn't come home until midnight. And my friend was scared someone might break in, which was so irrational because I'd lived here my whole life and I was fine. She was the richest of us and lived in a huge house and had no idea what it's like to not be privileged. She had an awful experience in a poor neighborhood a few years ago, so I get what she was feeling, but we were literally staying inside, so there's no reason for her to overreact. I told her she was being overdramatic, yet the rest of my friends all agreed with her, saying she was justified in feeling unsafe. I couldn't stand how they made me feel alienated for being poor, and how they couldn't even walk in my shoes for one weekend. In the heat of the moment, I said my friends were all spoiled brats, and we ended up in a huge argument, and they ended up cancelling the sleepover. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, you're the idiot. They got harassed on the way home by teenagers who you yourself say are looking for a fight. You also say you have to hide all valuables in your house because of break-ins. You've told them previously that your house has been vandalized. Then you want to insist you're safe because you're inside? How in the world does that make sense? Your mom also isn't home, so there aren't any adults around, which would help them feel safer. This really isn't about privilege and them overreacting at all. What you've gone through is absolutely traumatic, even if you didn't think it was. While it might be your reality, I can't see why someone would want to stay there when other options are available to them. Of course, they all wanted to go home after knowing how unsafe the area is and being harassed on the way to your house. They could have been kinder in their comments for sure, and I'm guessing it was an eye-opening experience for them. I'd talk to them about the comments they made, but I'd also apologize for saying they're overreacting. Comment 2. You're the idiot. How they couldn't even walk in my shoes for one weekend. They don't need to walk in your shoes to know that your shoes suck. That does not mean they think you suck. They think you suck for calling them spoiled brats. You think your neighborhood sucks. Are they not allowed to agree because of their privilege? They felt unsafe. Some of that is privilege, some of that is you, and some of that is the reality of your neighborhood. You don't like it either. You are stuck there, and they can leave. It pissed you off, and you lashed out at their privilege out of envy. Understandable, but not a great look. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been 2 weeks since my last post about the sleepover disaster at my council house, and boy, do I have an update for you. Remember how my friends bailed on our sleepover because they felt unsafe? Well, things have escalated, and not in a good way. First off, let me give you a bit of history on my friend who called her parents to pick her up first. We'll call her Emily. Emily's always been the type to have everything handed to her on a silver platter. Her parents are loaded, and she lives in a mansion with more rooms than she can count. She's the one who always has the latest gadgets and designer clothes. We've been friends since primary school, but I guess I never realized how different our worlds were until that night. Now back to the juicy stuff. After the sleepover fiasco, things at school got weird. My friends started acting distant, and whispers followed me down the halls. Turns out, Emily had been spreading rumors about my home, saying it was a den of crime, and that she felt her life was in danger the entire time she was there. Can you believe that? She even told people that my family was involved in some shady business to afford my school fees, which is absolutely not true. My scholarship is based on my grades, nothing else. The confrontation happened in the cafeteria. I was sitting alone, as usual, when Emily and the rest of the group strutted over. They had that look in their eyes, the one that spelled trouble. Emily started in on me, saying how I should be grateful they even considered slumming it at my place. That's when I lost it. I reminded her of all the times I'd been there for her, like when she got her first B and thought her life was over, or when she broke up with her boyfriend and I spent nights consoling her. I told her that real friends don't judge each other based on where they live. But here's the kicker. While we were arguing, Emily's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and went pale. She tried to hide it, but I saw the screen. It was from her dad, and it mentioned something about their assets being frozen. In that moment, I realized why she'd been acting out. Her family was under investigation for tax evasion. The queen bee of our group, the one who looked down on my neighborhood, was about to lose everything. The rest of the group was stunned. They started to see Emily in a different light, and the tables turned. Suddenly, she was the one being isolated. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Maybe now she'd understand what it's like to be on the other side of the gossip and judgment. As for my other friends, they've been trying to make amends. They've apologized for bailing on the sleepover and for not standing up to Emily. I'm not sure if I can forgive them just yet, but I'm considering it. It's hard to trust them again after they so easily believed the lies and turned their backs on me. School's been a battleground of rumors and shifting alliances, but I'm staying out of it. I've got my studies to focus on, and I'm determined not to let this drama derail my future. I've been through worse, and I'll get through this too. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.